Today we're going to look at the Python file object. Very important because most likely any Python programming assignment that you're going to be given in the workforce will have as a deliverable some type of output. I look at things that I've done in the past for different marketing campaign software, and you had your whole programming element, but your end result of your screen interactions and all your calculations is usually a file, maybe a CVS file or some other type of file. So what we're going to do today is explore how Python handles I/O, which is input output to files. So we're going to assign a file object to out file, and we do it with this open function, and we type in the name. We call it test.text. And there's different modes we can open it in, and we're going to open it in write mode. So we want to write things to it. Now to actually write some to this file, we can use the write method of the file object, and we're just going to say hi. In a little bit, I'm going to show you how to do this with a with statement. It's a little more secure from the aspect of locking up resources on your system. So, but let's just test it this way out. It's fairly simple. So we go out file, and when we're done writing to this file, it's really important that we close it. That the file actually closes is a very good thing. So if you're not doing this with a with statement, you're doing it totally with by opening and then using the various methods of the file object to write. You want to make sure the last thing you do is close it, so you don't hold up the resource if someone else needs to write to that file. Okay, so let's test this test file out. We're gonna run it, and Python's gonna want me to save, and I don't think I have a test 10, so let's try that. Okay, so we ran it. We didn't have Python tell us anything else in there. We didn't put anything that's going to actually happen on the screen. We just put everything in the program to the file. So let's go look and see if we can find this file. Oh, looks like we have a file, and it put hi like we asked it to, which is good. It did what we wanted. Now I'm going to close the file here, and we're gonna change around the program. We're gonna add some more things to it. We're gonna use a with open, and this is the recommended way of doing that. And we're gonna copy some of this down here to kind of save a little time. And we're gonna keep the file name. We're gonna open in write mode, and we do like this. So this is similar to any maybe a for loop that you might be interested in. You can see it indents. So we could put everything under this indent that we want to do to this file. So one of the things we want to do is we want to do a high, but let's put a high 2 this time. Let's 2. So we have high number 2, and let's run that. Gonna run it. Gonna run. We're gonna look at it, and this time we have high 2. You notice that even though we left in the high, it's not there anymore. It got overwritten with the high 2. And in a little bit here, we're going to go over what we can do to prevent that situation. So let's go, and we're going to borrow this code here, and we're going to make sure we get the indents right. Okay, so let's do it again, and this time let's do it in append mode. So what we're going to say is that we want to open the file, but to append, whatever we're writing into it. So we're going to call that 3. So what's going to happen if we run this, if we don't comment this out, we're going to write high to the file, and then high is going to get totally overridden with high 2. We're going to reopen the file, but this time, instead of starting anew, wiping everything out, overwriting everything, we're going to append it to the original. So let's run this. And it runs, and once again we didn't put anything going out to the screen. So to look at our program, we're going to have to look in here, and we see that we have high number 2 and then high number 3. Now a thing we could do is to get that a little less crumpled up. We could do some code like this. Let's just reuse this so we don't reinvent the wheel. So this is going to run, it's going to do all this. Like I said, we could comment this out if we want to, or we can be lazy because we know when it hits that W, we're just going to start anew. But this time we want to keep things on separate lines, make it easier to read, and you could add tabs in there and whatnot. But we're gonna say we want everything to be a new line, so we're gonna run this. It runs, and once again we didn't print anything to the screen, so we got to look in our output file, and here we have it on separate lines. We looked at writing to a file, but let's look at reading a file. I mean, a lot of projects you may get involve reading in a list of customers, reading in a list of counties or addresses or states, and then doing some manipulation with it in Python, and then eventually outputting it. So let's look at how to read something. So we're gonna copy this, but we're gonna make some changes. We're gonna call this file, and so we're gonna do another with. This time you notice that you don't see us trying to open it in write mode or pen mode. This time we're just going to read from it, so we're not going to use any of these options with open. And when we pull it in, and let's put it in a loop. Let's grab things in here. We're going to go for line in file, and we're going to print it out. So let's see what this is going to do. We could leave all the other stuff we have in here too. So you can see it eventually gets the last file we made that was in a couple lines, and then goes through here and prints it out for us. Now there's other other things we can do here, and let's look at them. Let's say instead of just going from line printing what's in there, I want to pull it in into a string. So we're going to close this, and we're going to kind of use this as our base here, because we're still going to use the width, and we're going to still use the file, but this time we're going to do things a bit differently. We're going to start looping through there. We're going to save the file, and we say file dot read. Okay, so we're going to use read equals. So what I'm doing basically here is that going to read in the whole file, and then once the whole file has been read in, we're going to print it. And what do we call it? The file. Okay, so this should read it in and then print it. Okay, so you get some very similar. We read everything into one big string, which is fine for this, but sometimes we deal with some bigger, and let's look at that. We have to deal with some bigger. In this case, I have a file already out there, and it's just a list of states. It's called US states. So we have open US states as file, the file, and we're going to do basically the same thing we did with our smaller test file, but we're going to do it with this states file. Let's run it, see what we get here. And oh well, so big it doesn't want to show it here, but let's click on it. Okay, there it shows the entire file got put into one giant string, which is nice. We read the whole file, but very difficult if we need to access like one element. Let's say we want to get Michigan, for example, and we want to pull up Michigan. There's really no way to get into it easily. We'd have to kind of look through this, and do quite a bit of parsing through it. But luckily, Python has lists, and we talked about that list in the past, and they're really handy for anything that's a list. And once you put something in a list, you can then access the elements of it. So we're going to close this down, and what we want to do this time is we want to pull in that same file, but instead of one big string, which is nice if we're just going to print it all out, but if we wanted to do some calculations with it and add string manipulation, add this 50 states, add extra words to it, be able to pinpoint what states you want. Putting everything in one big string is not a good idea. So we want to actually pull it in and make it a list. So we're going to start with the kind of really similar code there. Let's call it something different. We're going to call it string. And instead of read, we're going to use read lines. What read lines is going to do is it's going to pull it in as a string. So we're going to have, we're just going to pull it in as a list as opposed to a string. So the file dot string, well, that's not named good. Let's call it the file dot list. Okay, we have the file list is going to be a list, and now that we know it's a list, we can, let's say we'd grab the 8th line of that file, which would be 8 state in the list, and we're just going to print that. And we could do lots of things with it once it's brought in. We could write a really complex program doing different things for all 50 states that we bring in. But for now, let's just pick state number 8, which would actually be state number 9, because as you recall, lists start with 0 and they progress. So let's run this and let's comment this out, because with all these, the giant string we made earlier, that gets kind of confusing by looking at. So we're going to comment this one out. It's just it's one big string, a lot of data to deal with, so we're going to comment it out, and now we're going to run. Okay, so this time it did kind of our first examples, and then when it got to reading in the states file, we pulled it in a actual list, so we could just access the various elements of that. And we pulled out number 8, which happens to be Florida and Tallahassee. Let's throw in another one, just to kind of see how that works. So we're going to look at 0, just to prove that lists do start at the 0 position. So let's run that again. And we have Alabama in Montgomery, Alabama. And just the beauty of that, pulling it into the list, is that now we have loaded a list object with all 50 states. And later in your program, if it's a very complex program, we could reference that and have it piece together bits of string, have it to do, we can do basically a lot of things with that. So when I'm reading in some sort of text file, it usually is some along the line of a list, and this is some that I may do a lot more often in the real world, as opposed to just parsing line for line, or pulling in as one big string and then having to go through that. The fact that Python with read lines can just automatically populate a list is one of the niceties of Python that makes it a lot of people's favorite programming language.